length documentary here. And this year during IDFA it was announced that you got a grant from the Boris Gerrets cultural fund for documentary, so you already have some funding for your next project, so congratulations with that. That must be a very kind of calming idea not to look for money in the next year.
Well, thank you very much. Yes, definitely, because I like to work with a sort of an open agenda and not necessarily know when I start working exactly what's going to happen. And so having this kind of grant is just perfect.
So when you say you like to work with an open agenda, for this film, Shado'man, you went to Sierra Leone, but that's not exactly a country that is unknown to you because you spent time there as a child. Was that also the reason to go back and shoot a film there, or was it another occasion?
Well, I began, after I left, I never came back for many years, and in the meantime things had happened, which is the most important thing was the Civil War. But I didn't feel I could go without having a definite purpose. And at some point I had the opportunity to develop an idea for a film that would be about something completely different than this. But as things went, it coincided with, when I was about to leave, it coincided with the death of my mother, and I was in an emotionally completely different space. So when I came, I was reconnecting, revisiting the city that had changed mainly in terms of the numbers of people who were living there because of the war, all the refugees who came there. And I almost, I knew that I wanted to make a film. And when I met these people that are in the film, I knew it was going. It was like a snap decision that we were going to make a film together.
Okay, but how do you meet these people? Because it seems like they live in a whole different world, not necessarily a place you would enter as someone who's just visiting a country and a city, especially at night in these neighborhoods. So how did that work?
Well, I mean. One of the things that one looks at when you're traveling, you wonder what is the biggest problem here, and obviously it's an interpretation, whatever the biggest problem is. But I was struck by the amount of people who are disabled, who live in the street. So I thought, well, this is an enormous reality where so many people who have nothing. Basically being outcast and having to live on the street. And the thing is that you might not naturally come into this kind of environment, but this is the magic of having a camera, is it is an excuse to go into a reality that otherwise you might not even go, or basically because you wouldn't have anything to bring. And so for me, the fact that I was a filmmaker became very important in my relationship to the people that I met.
But then, during the end credits, you say especially with, and I read somewhere that you rather make films with people than about people.
Yeah.
So how did this change happen from going there with a camera and thinking I should shoot a film here to making a film with these people?
Well, of course, this is a question of definition. But for me, it is important to create a small community with the people that I work with. And what do I mean with community? I mean that there is a level of parity among us, which is of course not completely. I have to explain it because once you have a camera, there is a hierarchy or there is a difference in the situation whether you're in front or in behind the camera. But I want the people who are in the film to be collaborators, and I want them to be feeling that they have an agency about what they are doing in the film. And so I call that a small community. Other people might call it a film crew. But the community is based on let's say, within any community, there is a sort of a small economy of exchange, whether it's emotional exchange or whether it's exchange of needs that people have, or exchange of money or interests. So I think that little film crew also had this economic side to it. So once that is clear, that everyone has its function within that small space that is the film, you create trust also, because we all depend on each other, and it's clear what we want from each other.
But does the fact that you pay them or make them part of this economy of the film also mean that they change their behavior for the film?
Yes, definitely. Because I think the fact that if I would not have paid them, we would have not created that kind of intimacy. Because once, and you have to also see it in the context of the African situation, money is not only the material thing, money is also a form of respect to the other. You might think it's crazy, but it is true. Money is an important element in establishing connections to people, and it can go in a very sort of negative way into corruption, but it can also be something that is just a fact of life, because people need each other all the time, and money is one of the things that is functional in terms of being able to continue in a specific kind of reality. But I think the money thing, I'm very passionate about it, because I know that in the documentary world it's
sometimes
shunned and
not done.
yes,
yeah.
and of course you cannot do it always. Let's say that it depends on the situation. You can't pay a politician to say something specific, you know. But I think that in my way of working, if I imagine that I'm going to one of the poorest countries in the world with a film that has a six-figure financing scheme around it, where everyone is paid, tickets, cars, camera hire, rent, everything is paid, and then the people who are actually making the film are not paid. That's ridiculous. It's completely ridiculous. So, and I also wanted them to be able to make a step in their life to have this money that they earn, and I'm not giving it to them, they're earning the money. And so to be able to make a step that something changes, that they're able to make a significant kind of sort of progress in whatever the aims are that they have set for themselves.
Okay, before we open up the discussion to the audience, there will be a microphone. So if you have a question, please raise your hand and speak into the microphone. That's very helpful for the recording. I just wanted to ask you a bit about the reason why you decided to shoot the whole film in the dark, because there must be a whole story there.
Oh, there's several stories. The first one is just pictorial. I love that space. I love it from just in terms of how it reduces the information in the image to a few specific things, and everything that's lit becomes in a way significant, which is not necessarily the case during the day, and because you have too much noise, visual noise in front of you. So on the other hand, on a practical level, that area is during the day completely crowded, and with people and cars, and the place where they live is a shop. So they open, they have to leave, dismantle the tent, and so they're all scattered all over the town. So I can't even work with them together. But most importantly, when all these people leave, the town is empty, and the only people who stay are the homeless, and it allows me to create that kind of intimacy with them, and also to have them all together in one space where they always hang around.
But that is the practical level, because I also read some references to philosophers like Berkeley and Plato and the myth of the cave.
Yes, I mean, it's always difficult in film to start talking about metaphors, because people
you
like
started.
Well, but the thing is, of course, the reference to Berkeley was a particular quote that I found that also the work of Beckett is very much based on, which I took as a reference here. It says is to be, what was it again?
Perceived?
To be is to be perceived, which means that you don't exist if you're not being seen. And I think this was, for me, the film was about to bring to the light those who are in the shadow, or those who are living in obscurity, but also metaphorically in obscurity. And the film is the means of being able to penetrate into that reality. And at the same time, film itself is a shadow world, because I mean you're looking at reflecting light, and so there is this all this like place between the metaphor and the reality. And I originally thought it would be a film that was a journey through the night and its different phases, and then at the end it would be daylight, but I didn't use the daylight scene.
Okay, are there questions from the audience? I see a hand over there.
Hi.
Hi.
First of all, big compliment. I was really touched by your film, and I find it really honest how it was made. So I wanted to ask you how when you were shooting and afterwards you were editing the film, how did this kind of connection to these people maybe changed your, I don't know, how you perceived your everyday life or something, if you get some inspiration, or found it really impressive to see the dialogues, for example?
That's a good question, and I'm not completely sure if I understood everything, what the core is of the question, but let's say that what happened to me during the editing, I already started editing right there, so they have seen scenes, you know, that were edited, but not the whole film. But what happened while I was editing, and also when I was back here, was that for me, the grimness of the situation that might be impacting to the spectator in a specific way, it became less grim in a way, because I got used to it, and it was just the reality that you were dealing with. So it wasn't, I didn't feel the same somberness as you might have seen, or the spectator might have seen, because I got closer to, let's say, the warmth that is already in the human in the human presence of the people that I was dealing with. So if your question is, did it change me? I think yes, every film changed me. This one particular, and perhaps in such a way that I don't see the cultural differences as so significant. I think they're overblown. I mean, there are sometimes when people speak about cultural differences, it seems to me it's a fake problem. I mean, people are in their core, people are the same, and in their essential reactions and emotions, they are the same. And if you can connect on that level, which obviously in a situation where people live on an existential level, there is only existential things that happen. It might be appearing more evident that we're all the same. I mean, it's a bit of a cliche, but...
There was another question over there, I think.
Well, first, also compliments to this wonderful film, both in terms of the content and the way it was shot. I like your idea of paying people and involving them as sort of a crew. So I have two questions related to that process of participation. One is on how do you decide how much you should pay people? What are the criteria? When does it go right and when not? And the second is involving people in the editing process. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, let me start with the second question, because I can be very brief on it. I do the editing, and the only time I would change anything is when there would be significant ethical concerns by someone, or
it's not about a participatory process. I make a film, so I'm editing and I'm telling the story, and if there are things that are wrong or things that touch certain sensitivities, I have to weigh whether or not I put it in, but this didn't occur. But on the first question, the first question was about, it was also actually very simple to answer. I asked them how much they wanted, and they told me what they wanted. And then my producer said it's too much. I said, no, let's pay them exactly what they want. And so we did that. And that was the reason, the height, they determined their fee. And the things involved in that amount, let's say the amount of the fee that they asked, the reasoning behind that is, for them it is very important to remain respected with their peers around them. So it's not only a matter of earning the money, but it's also a matter of keeping the face in front of the other people that were not in the film, who will say, are you working with these guys? And and they're not paying you, or they're only paying you that. So it was very important for them to get respectability. And the amount was enough to give them, I mean, it wasn't a kind of amount that they determined, and that was still a lot of money for them, and it would enable them to make some step in their lives.
And did they do that?
Yes, in different ways. Cheryl finished the shack and lives there with Sarah and the baby. And David paid his sister a school fee, which then comes in a way back to him because she's going to help him. Cheryl is paying his mother, and I mean, everyone made his own choices of how to use the money. The only tragedy happened that the money by Lama, the blind man with the little boy, the first amount of money he made was all stolen by his own brother, and he disappeared with the money, and he locked him up in his home. He kind of first lured him with saying, I have some kind of business proposition, let's go do it together, then took all the money and left. And we were trying to trace him, but we couldn't find him.
Okay, are there any other questions? I see a hand over here and one in the back.
Boris, I'm moved by your film. I'm not.
Thanks.
Yeah, and I wanted to ask you, how did you? What moved me was also the philosophy. Yeah, the kind of philosophy which is in the film about dignity and about people who are disabled and who want to achieve something that is at the end of the film. And is there some scripting in it that you are provoking such things they say, or do you just how do you registreren, only registreren, or do you by talks or by scripting, that you have this things they say?
Well, there's no scripting, and certainly not a scripting in a traditional way, because they're illiterate, they don't read. And everything that's being said in the film is emerging from themselves, but sometimes I hear, we're in a conversation and I hear something, and I think, oh, this could be a topic that we can talk about, and then I create the space, the cinematic space for it to happen. Now, for example, if you take the conversation that goes along with Sarah and Cheryl about the name of the baby, that's a very simple thing. She's going to have a baby. What's the name going to be? So it's something inside their world. Have they discussed it before? They haven't. So I thought, well, let's discuss it. And then it was very interesting, because maybe I can just elaborate on that, because when you're dealing with a narrative like this, there are certain layers of the reality behind it which are not in the film, but are still interesting. And if you understand the cultural context, then you would know them. But if you don't, then I couldn't put it in the film. But one of the things why it is so important for Cheryl to have the baby have his father's name is that formally it proves that he is the father. Meaning it's not like he can go to the authorities and say, this is my child, and by naming the child according to his father's name, he becomes officially the father, and everyone in the community will respect him as the father of this child, and he will take the responsibility for this child. And at the same time, when this child grows up, it will also have to sort of return his duty as a child towards his father. So there's a practical and a psychological aspect to it, and all of that comes together in the need to name the child. So, but these are things that came up that I didn't know before, but I realized while the talk was going on. It was like a 15-minute conversation, and I had to cut it to 3 minutes. So all these layers, they're not there anymore.
There was another question here in the front.
Well, I was moved by the film too very much, and that was certainly provoked by the sound. It was a fantastic opening of your film with all those tick, 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 tick and all those combining sound. But did you edit? Was your editing influenced by the sounds you had recorded?
Yes, I mean, let's say on the level of the making of the film, the sound was one of the most challenging things, because the world we were working in, and the sound person was my daughter, was so incredibly rich in sound, but sometimes also deafening, and it was very difficult to isolate the things that you really wanted to hear. There is cars, generators, people screaming, radios passing by. All of that is very beautiful, but sometimes it's very difficult to, if you have a dialogue, to keep the voice and to have it emerge from that sort of panorama of sound. But the sound, and this is an interesting question, because I wish I was working with Dominique Vieillard in Paris on the sound mix and the sound editing. I wish, usually in film, what happens is you have what's called a picture lock. So you finish the film, there is no more changing of images. Everything is fixed, and then you go work on the sound. It would have been really interesting to be able to go back once more to the picture editing after the sound editing, and to kind of work more in precision with these two things. But that is a luxury that doesn't exist usually. What would have happened if I were able to go back? There are some moments, for example, where I used the music of Hans Otte, and I had more music in the film than there is now, so that sometimes we just took out the music because we didn't think it was appropriate. But then the rhythm of the music that I used during the editing still determines the image, the sequences, and let's say the timing of certain cuts. And then you would think, well, this is a bit too long, but it would have worked with the music. But once you take out the music, it doesn't work anymore. But then on the other level, the sound, the intensity and the density of the sound was part from the very beginning of the idea of this film, because it might, in this case, as when you see the film, be having a particular musical quality, but if you live in this society there, it is also a means of stress, or people are very stressed because of all the time the sound, day and night. You are bombarded with sounds, and that's why people sometimes just flip and are very stressed, and you have these fights going on. So it's a society that is in a pressure cooker, and that a big contributor to it is the sound.
So there's time for one final question. So there's the... Just flip a coin.
Thanks. It was a very impressive movie, I thought also. I wonder, do you have any idea about political effects in the society? I don't know where else there will be viewings, if the film is sold already, but you told a lot about the direct effects of the making of the film, but I was just wondering if you have any aim or if you have any idea about the bigger political effects maybe in society.
Well, I think there's two answers to this question. One is the society in Sierra Leone, and one is the society in general, which is our society. As far as the last one is concerned, I remember that I read something in the UK. There was a local politician in, I think it was somewhere in the south, Essex, or I don't know, and he was saying he came from a farm and he was part of the, he was like a local councillor or whatever to be elected, and he said, if children with disabilities, we should just throw them against the wall because they're a burden to society. And he wasn't ashamed to say that. He said, well, I'm a farmer, and when a lamb with 5 legs is born, that's what I do. So just to tell you, I mean, we're not in the UK, but there are still incredible prejudices towards disabled people, even though we might have all the facilities or almost all of the facilities. I haven't entered in the discourse of disability here, but there are still psychological barriers for disabled people to franchise, to be able to overcome. But given the situation in Sierra Leone, I'm going to show the film in January or February, and I heard that right now a new law is debated, of which I don't know the specifics, for disability, and I think that this film will help to contribute to that debate. But on the other hand, I feel that in that society, the one thing that is most lacking, and for the disabled people, and all of them, whether they're blind or deaf, or is respectability. And a film like this, which is larger than life, helps them attain that and overcome certain kind of prejudices. And it doesn't cost anything. You don't need money. You just need to switch a perception. So I hope that there will be an effect, at least with some stakeholders and some key people, to change the debate towards in favor of the disabled people.
So thank you, Boris. Actually, I think that is also especially what the shadow idea of Plato is about. We are looking at the real world, so maybe we've seen something that will help us to see better. So thank you very much for sharing your stories.
Thanks for coming.
The famous IDFA cap is
really?
for you as a little token, but maybe you should bring it to Sierra Leone and give it to someone who will need it in the rain. Thank you so much, and thank you for your questions.